Well, Angus Fraser, thanks for your time. I appreciate this. We don't often get a chance to sit down and have a natter and pull things apart, because we're usually running in between cricket matches here, there and everywhere in the season. So I appreciate your time. It's been a tough start to the year. 5 defeats in 6. It's hurting players, it's hurting management, hurting yourself, hurting members. I know I saw you at the start of the season. You looked exhausted then, because it's been a tough couple of years with COVID, hasn't it? But I guess these first 6 matches, this wasn't what everybody was hoping for, and certainly not what you yourself were hoping for.
Definitely not. I mean, had an excellent pre-season actually in the market at Merchant Taylor's School. I'd say probably facilities and what we had there would have been as good as anything in the country, to be honest, and a really good field. So yeah, what has taken place has really sort of, well, certainly I think it's taken everybody back and taken us by surprise. I think everybody's angry, frustrated, hurt, and encouraged as well. I mean, to sort of say that it's just everything is doom and gloom would be wrong. There are some encouraging things, and this has, I'd have to say, it's been probably the toughest period of my career since I've been in this role. Really, it's been really challenging. We're angry, frustrated. We've been in good positions at the end of day 2 in 5 of the 6 matches that we've played in, and obviously fallen away in 4 of those, which has been hugely frustrating, I suppose, and hurt in the way that, as you said, a lot of people have worked incredibly hard in the last 14 months to keep everything going and keep everything together. And people have shown a lot of care and love for the club. And whilst you realise and accept that sort of what you do in those sort of areas is not always sort of reflected immediately on the field, it sort of hurts you when you see people struggling. And the players really care. I mean, they're in a difficult position. I think some of them care too much. I know that's not the sort of the language that is used by a lot of people, I'd imagine, when they're sort of trying to assess where we are. But these players are desperate to achieve. They work the socks off. You see the dressing room when they get out or when things happen, and it's not a pretty place, and they're desperate to succeed. And I suppose the pressure goes up, anxiety goes up when you don't. So it's something that we've got to deal with. I don't believe a lot has gone our way in some sort of situations. I mean, tosses, marginal decisions, weather, but we don't want to have an excuse culture at the club. We want to sort of deal with the things that we want to, what we feel we can control, and we've not managed situations of games as well as we would have liked or wanted to, and we haven't played well enough for long enough. And when we have fallen away, it's been sort of in an alarming fashion. But equally, I mean, as I said, there are some encouraging things. We're seeing some really good things in some of the young players. They're getting opportunities. Obviously, Robbie White's batting's come on this summer. Ethan Bamber's bowling continues to impress. Blake Cullen impresses in every way. You've got Holden Cracknell. We know Anderson is going to be developed into a fine cricketer. So the signs are good for the future. It's just at this moment in time, we want to be winning games and feeling a lot better than we currently are.
I guess watching, as I've done for many years now, but watching, the last few years, one of the reoccurring frustrations was first innings runs and batting points. Ironically, the first innings haven't been too bad this year. It's been the second innings where the collapses have come, and all those players there, as you say, desperately want to do well, and they have all done well, but at different times. And that again is the hard part, isn't it? It's getting those 2 innings together. It's getting those players as a group together to collectively put together, I guess, what's required. And that, I guess, is something of the conundrum that yourself and Stuart are having to, and the batsmen themselves, because as you said, it's not for a lack of, I think Stuart Law said it the other day, it's not for a lack of talent or a lack of desire that this isn't happening at the moment.
Yeah, and it isn't. I mean, it isn't a lack of ability. Although we're not sort of sat here sort of thinking that something got the side that Middlesex had in the 80s with all those international players, but there is a lot of talent, there's a lot of potential around, and again to sort of be at the end of day 2 in 5 games as in the stronger position shows that we're competing and competing favourably against strong sides like Somerset and Hampshire and Surrey, and obviously Gloucestershire as well. So we're good enough to get in these positions. It's then following it through, and it's almost as I say, confidence. I always remember I'm a big Liverpool supporter, and obviously Liverpool had a sort of big wobble sort of earlier this year, and Jurgen Klopp sort of saying, well, confidence is a delicate flower that can easily be trodden on, and putting confidence into someone is not straightforward. It's not as though you can just flick a switch or inject them like with a vaccine or anything like that. It's something that can disappear very quickly, and it takes some time to build up, and everybody is working, I say, their socks off to try to turn this sort of corner or change this position that we're in at this moment in time.
You talked about the side of the 80s there and the talent that was there. I guess one of the questions, obviously, that's been asked this last year or so, or particularly this year now, is do you regret letting David Malan go? Because obviously he was a key run scorer for the club.
I mean, letting David go was a big decision. Would he have played this year? No, he wouldn't have played the game yet because he was at the IPL. So whether David was on the staff or not wouldn't have changed anything, and obviously very little last year too. But do we regret that? No. If we took the decision that if we want our younger players, I mean, David's got lots of qualities. I mean, there are some negatives about David too in there, and we just believe that if we are going to get the best out of our younger players moving forward, we needed to change the environment, change the culture, and that's why we sort of allowed David to leave. So, yeah, and people will say, well, it's all about. We obviously want people to be out there winning games of cricket, but we're and us for competing for trophies. There's no doubt about that. But we're also trying to develop youngsters, bring youngsters through, and we need to sort of create the environment that we believe is the most productive one for them.
I guess that word that comes back a lot at the moment is culture and a change of culture. And with regards to David's, it seems as though, that's where a lot of it was pushed towards. There was a feeling that last year that David was at the club, that a captaincy change was required, a change of direction, a change of culture. And is there still something of a hangover from that?
I feel sorry or frustrated for Stuart, because I don't think as of yet he's had the real chance to sort of fully impose himself on the dressing room and put into place what he wants to put in place. We signed Stuart because he was the outstanding candidate. He's got great qualities. He wants to develop young cricketers. He wants to bring cricketers through and improve cricketers. He's also there to challenge the senior players, which I think they've been a sort of, we need to get more out of our senior players. So the first year, so 2019, is really him and Nick to sort of sit back, view, get a feel for the club and how it works and the individuals involved. And then we make some decisions at the end of 2019, going into 2020. And obviously since then, we've been in this sort of surreal, sort of COVID driven world. And it's, I say, a lot of work has been done and a lot of care has been taken, but it's been challenging to try and sort of, I would say there'd be less than 10 times where we've had the entire group together in one session or under one roof or involved in one internal game of cricket, sort of since March last year when COVID was allowed. So I say it's been challenging, all the one-to-one sessions, which are good in sort of building individual relationships with people, but getting your team together as a group and trying to sort of engender that sort of feeling of togetherness has been challenging. But again, the players are stuck together. Even though we lost to Hampshire, had a quiet beer in the dressing room, some pizzas were ordered in. It's not as though everybody's splitting off in their own direction. And sort of like that, the players are together, they're working hard together, and everybody's trying to turn things around.
I guess another challenge that you had coming into this summer was what was reported in the Mail about the pensions. How much has that affected that kind of trust and bond that obviously is one of the things that you're trying to, I guess, part of that culture that's trying to be turned around? I know that was a phrase that Stuart Law used right back at the beginning, that he wanted it to be a family Middlesex. And obviously that first year was a challenge. And the culture is something that still now is being talked about being turned around. But I guess on the eve of the season,
well, I mean, we've worked hard at the culture. We've done a lot of work with Simon Shepherd, who sort of specialises in this area, and a sort of a page or a big sort of poster is what we want, the things we want to achieve and the things that we want to avoid. So the characteristics we want to show as a group, the way we want to work with each other, treat each other, be viewed from outside, and again, the opposite side are the things that we want to avoid. So there's a piece of work going on there. I mean, how the pensions thing, I don't know. I mean, I say, I don't know how a player sort of turns up. Do I turn up for work sort of thinking about the pension situation? Because it's not just the players, it's everybody in the club that it's affected. No, I don't. But has there been a level of trust sort of eroded? Yes. And that's something that we as a club have got to work hard to get back. But I don't think when an opening batsman goes out to bat, he's thinking about what's taking place in the pension, and equally when they're standing there at second slip. But undeniably, it will sort of appear in conversations every now and then, and we know when things aren't going according to plan. If you're looking to find excuses, you can find them, and it could crop up, but it's not something that I'm aware of sort of dominating the conversation around the dressing room, that's for sure.
Has it affected at all? I mean, is it 7, I think, are up this year, contract-wise? Has it affected negotiations for those, or indeed, I guess, the bigger picture, of what we're talking about in terms of a rebuild of the club, if that's required? Has any of that affected the negotiations for the 7 contracts? Or?
No, I mean, obviously, the sum of money that, I mean, everybody who's had problems with their pension will get their full. They'll get what they deserve and should have in that account. So there's no question of sort of people not being suddenly being shortchanged or anything like that. And that's a sum of money which obviously the club has got to find, but it's not a sort of long-term issue for the club. It's something that as we've been sort of saying. I mean, the lack of crowds at Lords for a couple of T20s certainly will outweigh out sort of number that as far as what the money that Middlesex have got to find. But really, the 7 players, we sat down with them in October last year and sort of said that because of the financial uncertainty going forward, and I suppose there still is now. I mean, who knows how this Indian variant is going to affect the game, and all of a sudden, if the June the 21st is pushed back as a date where you can start getting big crowds into grounds, the knock-on effects of that is going to be severe throughout the entire game. So we're no different from any other county there, but we sort of wanted to sit down and be honest and open with the players whose contracts were up in October, and we sort of had to tell them that at this moment in time the club wasn't able to commit. But equally, then we sat down in March when there is a bit more security, and we've offered extensions to those players. And we didn't sort of say, right, you've got to sign your contract by next Tuesday or anything like that. But certainly follow-up meetings now with those players will be taking place to find out exactly where they are.
And how do you guys view it as management in terms of, obviously there was the title win in 2016, but it has been a period of decline since then. With positives, the positives being that opportunities were to be given to players, in particular youngsters, because there is a very exciting batch of youngsters coming through at the moment. And as we had one correspondence in the last match, had a second overseas player been signed this year, then Robbie White would probably be playing for Gloucestershire next year. And that's the difficult balance, isn't it? But hindsight's a wonderful thing. If you could have gone back a couple of years, would you have said maybe that was something that was missing, was that more senior head in the batting lineup? Voges and Rogers over the years had filled, and obviously Pete Hanscom comes in now, but he drops into the middle of it really, doesn't he? Because it is knee deep in the perfect storm at the moment, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, the opportunity to get 2 overseas players has only come in this year. I mean, before that it was Colpack players. So that was just a change in the regulations, and obviously caused by Brexit and everything like that. So we had Miguel Cummins as a potential, but because of the finances are not strong for any club at this moment in time. And so, yes, you're right. Either have we got the money to do that? No, at this moment in time. So, and two, would the ramifications of that be that potentially a young player that we believe has got some ability moves somewhere else? Yes. I mean, you look at, all right, I don't want to go back, but equally, sort of, you look at 2017, we get relegated. However unjust you sort of feel that is, but we end up getting relegated. So you face that sort of punch to the solar plexus, and you sort of sit there and you think, well, where are we here? Is the second division a place where you allow 35-year-olds to sort of put a couple of years on their career, or do you give the youngsters that you believe? We've also lost Ryan Higgins as a cricketer that we didn't want to lose, and he went because he wasn't getting the opportunities. And I'm not blaming James Franklin, because James Franklin obviously guided us to a championship victory, but you've got two players there competing for the same position, and the younger player moves on, and we want to avoid that. So certainly taking a view there that we want to get our youngsters coming through and give our youngsters a chance. And as a county, we should not be rueful of the fact that we lose players, and we should be proud of the fact that we're oversupplying county cricket with cricketers. I mean, Adam Rossington, Josh Davey, Chris Wright, who's obviously coming more to the end of his career now.
I think I drew up a list of 12 the other day that we're playing at the moment.
So that we should be supplying the system with cricketers. Obviously, we want to keep the best ones at the club, and I say that's not always going to happen. And again, players sort of develop at different stages of their career. So sometimes you can look foolish, sometimes it can look like the right decision. But we certainly want to. I certainly want to bring young players through. And again, we're excited by what a number of our young cricketers are showing, and the opportunities they're getting. And whilst it's extremely sort of, I say, frustrating and disappointing to sort of not be winning at this moment in time, I think in a few years' time we will have a really exciting group of young cricketers to look forward to watching for a period to come.
I was going to ask, really, is there a short-term fix though? I guess the answer is no. The short-term fix is trying to do the basics, but that obviously is what a lot will look to. Is this the group of players that you want to build to take forward Middlesex Cricket Club? At the moment, you said finances are difficult, so recruiting in's not easy. Then there's the ramifications of recruiting in. But is this the nucleus that you still want to move forward with?
Yes, yeah. I mean, there are. Whilst I don't think some of the senior players will sort of sit down and sort of say they're overperforming. We need to get the best out of them, and you obviously need to get the balance with a blend of youngsters and senior players, and hopefully the senior players sort of leading and I suppose grabbing hold of matches every now and then. And I say, when you get young, I mean, when I was young, I didn't bowl better balls when I was 25 than I did when I was 18. I just bowled fewer bad balls. So therefore my game becomes more consistent, and I think with youngsters you're going to get some inconsistency, and you accept that, and you hope that the sort of senior players around the group will make up for those sort of little inconsistencies every now and then. But yeah, I say, with the 7 players contracts are up, we don't know quite what's going to happen with all them, but
the majority of those are senior as well, aren't they? I mean, we know who they are from press releases in terms of 2 years ago, X signed a contract, so we know who they are, but they're the majority senior players, aren't they?
Yes, and as I said, we've offered contracts to them, and we'll see what comes out of that as we move forward. And obviously, if players don't sign contracts, then money becomes available to sort of look to invest elsewhere, and that's something we are looking at as we move forward.
You said that this is one of the most difficult times, if not the most difficult at the club. Stuart Law was saying to me the other day, obviously similarly, it's tough. There's a scrap at the moment, and this is where that conversation about mental toughness came in. I'm sure he won't mind me saying, because he said this after the interview, but I'm sure he won't mind me saying there's one man that I really need alongside me at the moment, and that's somebody who bleeds Middlesex, and that's Angus Fraser. He was giving you his full backing and saying that's the kind of person that I need right now to be able to turn this around? I'm sure I know what the answer is going to be, but I've still got to ask it. Do you give him similarly your full backing that, you know, Stuart has got what it takes to deal with the situation that he's in? Because again, he inherited a lot of problems. He had to put out a lot of fires that first year, and the second year was COVID. So this is kind of the moving year, isn't it, for him?
Yeah, I mean, Stuart's my fullback, and we work very close together. We get on very well, and I admire and fully respect what he's trying to do and the way that he's going about it. So, yeah, I mean, he has my total support. And again, it's hard to say. I don't know. I say you can't control what people think. You can't control the conversations that people have. But what I do know is, I mean, again, all right, Stuart's an Australian by birth. He's played for Essex. He's played for Lancashire, and Nick Pothas as well. I mean, these fellas care deeply about what they're doing. They care deeply about the club. They're hurt by the results and the sort of and the issues that we're facing. But equally, everybody's determined to come through this. You look at, again, sort of going back to my sort of Liverpool sort of support, and all right, Liverpool lost a lot of games, and I'm not trying to sort of compare us to them, but lost a lot of games, and you sort of think, well, actually, did they really deserve to lose them? They've outplayed the opposition, and the opposition have sneaked a late equaliser or a goal or something like that, and then you look at the game that they played on Sunday, where, to be honest, 2 or 3 or 4 decisions probably went their way that could have gone another way, and Alisson goes up at the other end and scores a goal with his header, and you just think, well, you just need that sort of break, don't you? Something like that to happen to get things moving forward. And Alisson's interview was revealing. You do a lot of things correct for a long period of time, and often have little to show for it. And then something happens, and it for no apparent reason, and it changes around. And yes, we're not sort of just ploughing down the same road without sort of thinking about it and without changing things around. But equally, we're doing a lot of things right, or we believe we're doing a lot of things right. And the players are doing a lot of things right. And we're just not having a great deal to show for it at this moment in time. But you've got to keep believing, you've got to keep working hard. During your career, my career, you have huge setbacks, you get dropped, you have injuries that are career threatening. What do? Do you just quit and walk away? Well, no, you don't. You get your head down, you think of a way forward, and you sort of follow that with some bloody vigour and try and get out of this thing. There's no, as I said, there's no sort of vaccination that you can take that suddenly sort of cures all this. It's a slow process, step by step, doing the right things, and eventually you get to where you want to.
I think you've just answered my next question again now, but you said at the start that this is the toughest you felt at Middlesex. Now, when you first came in, actually, that required a massive rebuild. That did require tearing a lot up and putting it all back together again, and that took a number of years, till 2011, really, wasn't it? Chris Rogers helped to get that young side that would go on to be the start of the side that put together for 2016. That was a massive rebuild. So it almost surprised me a little bit for you to say that you did feel that this was the toughest that it's been, because that for me probably is a worse situation in terms of Middlesex didn't have the players at that point, because you did have to let a few go to rebuild, and it did mean trying a lot of youngsters that actually, as youngsters did, they came and went. They tried their best and some went up to it. But how much of that pressure are you feeling at the moment? Because it is a heavy pressure, and as you said, there's a lot of anger and frustration at the moment. I think you answered a lot of that question there already in your last answer. But for yourself personally, you said it's a difficult time. How much of the pressure are you feeling?
The pressure comes from within, doesn't it? And it's the care. You take pride in your work. You're as professional and as meticulous about your work as you can be, and that goes through the entire sort of cricket department, in the way that we're sort of conducting ourselves, in the way that you're organising sessions, you're managing people, and people, you care about the results. You want to see your work rewarded in the way that you feel that it should be. And we all know in sport is cruel, and things don't go your way. But as I said, you keep believing that you're going to get what you deserve at the end of the day. And I mean, the number of times when I was a bowler, I bowled in tears. Or I went in the corner of my dressing room and sort of put a towel over my head, and you're in tears in the corner over the apparent injustice over what's taking place. And you only know the only way you get out there is you stand at the end of your run up again with your shoulders back, and you run in and you hit that pitch hard on a good length, and wait for things to sort of change. And that's what we do as a club. We keep working hard. We keep obviously thinking about what we're doing and trying to sort of come up with plans that sort of shift things around slightly. And in the belief that further down the line it will turn around. We will sort of look back on this as a sort of great learning experience, rather than something that's obviously causing you a great deal of anxiety and distress as it is at the moment. So,
like I say, that there was the rebuilds when you first arrived. You don't feel it's at that stage for Middlesex now. This is about getting the things right, because as we said, there's been a lot of
there is transition. Earlier. There is transition. I mean, and there has been, I think, since 2016, 17. With the emergence of some younger players and opportunities that have been given, and again some older players that are no longer with us. Your Comptons, your Franklins, obviously your Malans, your Sterlings, which was unfortunate just because of the Islanders situation, Ollie Rayner. So that there has been a sort of turnover of players and an introduction of other cricketers as well, and that is continuing. And whilst I say who knows how long Tim Mertz is going to carry on, but each year he just remarkably keeps performing, and the longer that continues, the better. But there are going to be some other players that sort of that have been sort of household names around Middlesex supporters for a period of time, coming to the end of their career, and it's our job to replace that. And I say that's the encouraging thing, is that you look at some of these younger cricketers behind, and you're very hopeful about what they can produce moving forward.
How much does the criticism hurt at the moment? Because there's obviously a lot, as you said, anger and frustration. The criticism flies as well.
I don't do social media, probably just as well, because I don't like it, and I don't like the sort of again, and I'm not sort of saying it, but use obviously the negative publicity and things that are said there at this moment in time. And you think, well, why get involved in that? And and it would be upsetting, undoubtedly, because a lot of the comments that are made are probably not made from the most informed position, and there's a lot of putting two and two together and getting not just 5 but 6 or 7. So you're obviously aware that it's going to be there, and I think it's harder for. I mean, certainly from a player's perspective, I think it's harder for their family almost to sort of, as a mother or a father, to sort of hear some of the things or read some of the things that are probably being said about your child. That's very out and all right. You know that goes with the territory, but you'd like to think that some of these people who are writing these things would like to. How would they like it if someone was commenting on their child in such a manner, or someone they care deeply about? So, but that's
what I was going to ask, because I mean, clearly, I remember last year Stuart Law did an interview, I think, after Canterbury, when 2 and 2 was put together, about why Middlesex didn't go after a result on that final day. Well, Middlesex were desperate to, but Kent didn't want to get involved in a negotiation on the final day. And everybody, I think, was copping a lot, player-wise, and the coach was very defensive that day, because he felt, listen, he's got to look after these players, because they are young men, and everybody, human beings, it's going to hurt. How much of that affects as well, because that's part of the pressure in the modern-day player, isn't it? That they are going to see and hear and feel those things that are said and written.
Yeah, I mean, when I look back at the last 14 months, I mean, that we've very much been a can-do club. What can we do? And central to this can-do is looking after the players and the staff, and keeping regular contact with them, and going out of your way to ensure that they're in a good space. And I'm not sort of belittling the sort of, obviously the damage that COVID could have on someone, but you've got young fit men here, and is if they caught COVID, how badly is it going to affect them? The chances are it's going to be minimal, but equally the sort of emotional effect of going through this, and I think it's affected us all emotionally. And again, I think that's probably why it's hit me as hard as Edmund, because for 14 months or for a season, you do very little, and all of a sudden it almost ratchets everything up, doesn't it? The importance, the desire to make this summer count, and when it's not sort of going as you would like, then the sort of disappointment is heightened too. But we're very much aware of that with the players, and the fact that we are trying to look after them. But it is difficult, and you do worry about sort of the effects of social media and constantly sort of reading the negativity, or they read negativity about themselves or people's opinions on them and things like that. And you wish you could just press a button and say, just ignore it, don't look at it.
And that will affect performance as well, because they'll carry that pressure with them to the middle, the pressure of, the last match.
Well, we all know that the 9 people might say positive things about something you're doing, and one person says negative. You remember the negative, and it would do it. It must clutter your mind. It must sort of affect your decision making, and you go out there fearing, don't you? You can go out there fearful, and you think, oh, the last thing I want to do is to get out cheaply today because so and so will be on my case again. All right, they are pressures that young cricketers now have got to manage, and that's why I'm sort of grateful I played when I played, to be honest, because it wasn't around. And if I had been around, I think I'd have been in a bit of trouble, because I wouldn't have held back in what I said to a few people questioning my sort of abilities and qualities and achievements compared to what some of them have produced in their lives. But I think I'd have been in front of the big on a few occasions if I'd have been playing now, because my natural reactions is to respond rather than to just sort of take it in.
So the long term is stick to what, well, both the long and the short term really is stick to the basics at the moment, stick to what you're doing, stick by the youngsters that are being brought through, and stick by the senior guys as well, because as you say, they're the ones at the moment that perhaps just need to find that moment to drag it around. Obviously the injury to Toby Rowland-Jones, massively unfortunate, because he's been that kind of talismanic figure, hasn't he? Whether subconsciously or consciously, I know all the players massively respect having Toby Rowland-Jones on the field, which is obviously something Middlesex have got to cope without at the moment.
He's one of our, I say, more confrontational figures, isn't he? Not in a nasty way, but in the way that he's in the face of the opposition. So yes, as a character in the dressing room, as a performer on the field, he is missed. But again, his departure gives opportunities for someone else to step up and try to sort of take them. And we've got we're lucky at this club. We've got some great people. It's a great club, full stop. With a rich history, successful history, and we want to keep building on that history. And that is, there's ambition, there's desire, there's care, there's pride. They're all the sort of characteristics that people talk about or want to see, and we see them within the squad. And we're back, we support, we keep the challenge for us is we've got to get the best out of them as we move forward, and they've got to get the best out of themselves. We've got to get the best out of them. We're all in this together, and the big thing is that we are sticking together, and we continue to stick together and fight our way through this difficult, challenging period.
Just a thought on the bigger picture. Again, it was something we touched on the other day, but didn't have a chance properly to talk about. Has Barnett gone? Because I heard you mention when we were nattering the other day about that the challenges off the fields for Middlesex, because obviously that's something else that's been a big drain of your time and the club's resources. Is Barnett now finished? The plan to try? Yeah,
there was obviously plans to sort of be involved at Cocktail, wasn't there, next to Saracens? Yeah. But Saracens, quite a big part of the business plan for the venue was along with Saracens, but obviously there's some concerns as to where they're going to be moving forward with the issues that they had a year or so ago. So, yes.
Is that all on hold then for a second ground at the moment, or is there a look for somewhere else?
No, it's funny because I was thinking about it the other day and sort of making a presentation to the staff, and just because others is lad, Mike Atherton's lad, obviously Josh is on our staff, and others has always been a sort of, and absolutely right in the way that he sort of says that if the Lancashires, Yorkshires, Surreys, Middlesex, Warwickshires aren't producing England cricketers, then the game's struggling, and therefore we have a role to do that. And also there was a sort of the coffins that we used to carry our kit around with then. They're now the sort of plastic bags that were sort of like the coffin type things that we used to. And there was FEC in the inside of his sort of coffin, which was Future England captain. And I sort of played on that. I mean, for Middlesex moving forward, we've got FEC. It's facilities, it's expertise, and it's culture. And they're the things that we need to keep working at and keep pushing for. Yes. We get sport rotten by Merchant Taylor School and Radlett Cricket Club. They do whatever they can to look after us, and obviously we play at one of the greatest sporting arenas in the world, at Lords. But we've got very little control over much of what we use, really. The only thing Middlesex own is a sort of players' house in Edgware. We've sort of been looking to move away from Finchley for a period of time, the indoor school there, and therefore that's not been sort of invested in. And yeah, there are some good plans moving forward to improve the facilities that we've got, and I think that's an important starting point, because again, Lords is brilliant. I mean, but we're not going to be at Lords for 6 weeks. From the middle of July to the end of August, because of the 100 and the test matches and things like that. And so players have to sort of take everything out of Lords and find somewhere else to put their bags and call home as such on a regular basis. So to try and have that behind the scenes is something that fortunately everybody at the club is aware of, and everybody at the club, including the board and everybody, is working to improve.
That's the next challenge, isn't it? Is the white ball this summer. Does this put a little bit of extra pressure now on the white ball competitions this year, which have always been a pressurised one?
Yeah, undoubtedly it does. And again, that's been far from straightforward, getting overseas players and things like that. I mean, I think to many, maybe the postponement of the IPL was a blessing in disguise, because there'd have been a number of players there that would have had to make a very quick turnaround from a red. Again, I don't know how we got about it, but I know, speaking to other directors of cricket, there are lots of new routes that are being explored to get your cricketers in to play county cricket this summer. And I say we've got that challenge with Majib, and there's another couple of announcements that we hope to make shortly, because Mitch Marsh can no longer come along because he's been selected in this Australia tour to the West Indies, which means that, and again, you say, well, what's happening? He's playing in July, but all of a sudden they've got to prepare in the West Indies, and then there's got to be 2 weeks quarantine before then, and before you know it, you're getting back to basically the start of our season. So,
are you confident you'll get those, or that signing to replace him over the line?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess I better let you go. We don't get time to do this often, do we? But I appreciate your time and your honesty. A difficult time for the club. No better place to try and turn it around on Thursday. Yeah,
the Oval is well, it's a magnificent venue, isn't it? And again, there's some crowds in, which would be nice to see. So supporters back in the grounds, and a good challenge, because you look at Surrey's batting lineup, and it's quite an impressive one, isn't it? But we got the better of them earlier on this season, and hopefully we can do the same again this coming weekend. And that'll be the key, won't it? Just to try and finish off the red ball bit now, because it, again, I'm putting my opinion on it too much, but the three of the first 4 defeats, Middlesex should have won 2 of the games, and that was the huge frustration. Yeah, I think again, just looking back at that, I think that hits you hard. I mean, you get into the position that we had against Somerset, and you fall away, and again, even at lunch on day 4, I think there were 6 down, weren't they? Still needing 100 to win. And Lewis Gregory, to be fair to him, has come out and played well, chanced his arm, had a bit of luck, but almost his bravery, he deserved the success he had because he was brave when he came out. And you suddenly sort of think, well, if that had gone the other way, who knows what might have happened. But it went that way, and we've got to rectify it. So, but it would have had a sort of negative effect on the confidence of the group, wouldn't it? To sort of see a game that you've dominated, you've probably won certainly 5 of the first 6 sessions, and then you sort of see it sort of fall away in front of your very eyes, which is hugely frustrating.
Yes, appreciate your time. Thanks very much for your honesty as well.